AITA for leaving my wife after she ditched me while I was sick to travel with my brother? It was a Tuesday at noon, late in May, and the sunlight filtering through the blinds felt more like a spotlight than warmth. I had spent days dragging my exhaustion around, blaming stress or allergies, but that morning, my legs gave out on the way to the bathroom. I lay on the cold tile for 15 minutes, my forehead pressed against the grout, listening to Vanessa laughing downstairs. She did not come when I called her name either. I could hear the click of her heels, her voice on the phone saying, "Yes, he continues to be dramatic. It is surely a man cold." It did not surprise me. She had been like this for a while, distant, bored, too pretty and too put together to burden herself with a husband who, according to her, was not emotionally present. That is what she had said the last time we argued. "You are here, but you are not present." I had wanted to scream at her, to tell her that being sick is not the same thing as being selfish, but my voice barely rose above a whisper. The woman I had married had once held my hand after I lost a job and during a near-nervous breakdown. Now she rolled her eyes when I asked her to hand me the thermometer. It was only the next day that I was admitted to the hospital. The doctors suspected a bacterial infection, perhaps pneumonia, and my white blood cell count was in the stratosphere. I remember the sterile light of the emergency room, the beeping of the machines, the cold of the foot entering my arm. But what I remember most clearly is Vanessa sitting in the corner scrolling on her phone. She did not even look up when the nurse explained that my condition could become critical without immediate treatment. My mother stopped by for about 20 minutes bringing pastries she knew I could not eat and kissed my cheek with the emotional warmth of a weather forecast. "You will be fine," she said dismissively. "You are strong, and anyway, we already booked our trip to Greece. So do not give us a reason to cancel." I did not answer. I could not. My throat was swollen and scratchy. My chest hurt with every breath, and even if I had the words, what could I have said? "Please, stay?" I had never begged in my life. I was not going to start now. Vanessa told me she had already made her decision. The tickets were not refundable, and Connor, my little brother, was already counting on the trip. She said it as if they formed a team, as if I were the annoying third wheel in their plan. "Look," she said, adjusting her sunglasses inside the hospital as if she were on a runway. "You cannot hold me back with your illness. Do you know how long I have wanted this vacation? Besides, I will have a lot more fun with Connor." That last part was neither a murmur nor a whisper. She threw it at me like a dart, without shame, without regret, just that irritating smile she had perfected for when she wanted to be witty. I looked at her, stunned. My brother, the same one who asked to borrow money and forgot to pay it back, the one who spent more time sculpting his abs than building a real career. And she was leaving with him, and neither of them seemed to think there was anything wrong with that. When they left, I was alone for the first time in weeks. Not just physically, but spiritually alone. The kind of loneliness that makes you question your own worth. I stared at the hospital room's ceiling, tracing the cracks in the paint with my eyes while feverish delusions clawed at the edges of my mind. The nurses came and went. The machines beeped. Time passed in strange elastic stretches, but there was one constant, Irene, my housekeeper. She did not even have to be there, but she came every afternoon after her shift, sat with me in silence, or read aloud to me from the book on the nightstand. She brought me water when I could not lift my hand. She tucked me in, cooled my forehead, and reminded me through actions and not words that I mattered, that there was still someone who cared whether I lived or died. I had never expected that kind of grace from her, not because she was incapable of it, but because I had been too distracted, too self-centered to see who she really was before all this happened. The day the fever finally broke, Irene was the first to notice. I remember waking up to the sound of her voice, soft and firm. "Mr. Brandon, your skin is cooler today. Is that good?" "Yes." I could barely nod, but I felt tears stinging my eyes. It was not just the fever breaking. It was the emotional dam I had held back for weeks, months, maybe years. The weight of being taken for granted, of being used and abandoned hit me like a wave. My family was in Greece drinking wine and watching sunsets over white rooftops while I fought for my life alone. Well, not entirely alone. And that difference mattered more than I could imagine. The following week, I was stable enough to leave the hospital, but I did not go home. I checked into a private recovery villa by the coast, an isolated and quiet place where no one could show up unannounced. That is where I called my attorney. I want to change my will, I told him in a flat voice. He asked if I was sure. I stayed silent for a long moment, then repeated it. I am absolutely sure. My wife would receive nothing, my brother nothing. Not even my mother, who had the audacity to post an old picture of us on Facebook with the caption praying for my strong son, as if she had ever acted like she truly cared about me. They had all clearly indicated their priorities, and now I was going to clearly indicate mine. The thing with betrayal is that it never feels cinematic when it happens. There is no dramatic music or a thunderstorm at just the right moment. It arrives silently in the way someone shrugs when you are struggling to breathe, or in the casual tone with which they let you know you are not their priority. I spent long hours in the villa trying to reconstruct how I had gotten there. How the woman I had trusted with my name was now carrying a suitcase to Greece, smiling next to my brother as if she were stepping into a life she had been rehearsing in secret. I lay there, my chest still tender from the infection, watching videos of them zip-lining over cliffs and dancing at a rooftop bar. Vanessa's voice was clear in one clip, yelling, "Wow," while taking a sip of ouzo. Behind her, Connor smiled at the camera, his shirt unbuttoned to his navel as if he were the star of a cologne commercial. The comments were filled with emojis, hearts, and fake friends saying how cute they were together. I stared at the screen until my jaw clenched, until the edges of the video turned into a red haze. She had said those words so easily. "You cannot hold me back with your illness." It was her escape route, her excuse to rewrite history and play the brave, unfazed wife living her best life while her husband deteriorated in a hospital bed. But the next part, "I will have a lot more fun with your little brother." That was not just selfishness, it was surgical. It was said to hurt. And it succeeded because, deep down, she probably knew their friendship had crossed a line for months, maybe longer. Family gatherings had started to feel strange. Too many exchanged glances, too many inside jokes I was not part of. Once, I walked into the kitchen and found them laughing, heads too close together. When I asked what was so funny, they went quiet. I chalked it up to my imagination. I did not want to be the jealous and insecure husband, but now I know I was not paranoid. I was simply trying not to see the truth. I did not even get a goodbye when they left. No hugs, not a word of comfort. I found a note on the counter when I got home from the hospital. "We are leaving for Greece. Call if you need anything, even though you are fine." That is how seriously she took my health. A note written between a flight confirmation and a passport. Connor did not even bother to send me a message. My own brother, the one I had pulled out of debt when he was drowning in bills. The one who had lived on my couch for 6 months after his second layoff. I justified it, said he was finding himself, but the only thing he found was that I was an easy target. And now, with my wife on his arm and arrogance behind them, he no longer had to pretend. Irene was the one who sat next to me while I watched those videos. She did not say much, just placed a calm hand on my arm and let me feel everything. I did not need comfort in that moment. I needed clarity, and I got it. The kind of clarity that only comes after a loss. My fever might have broken, but something else had shattered inside me. My tolerance, my willingness to carry people who would not even bend down to pick me up. That night, I told Irene, "They have already made their decision." She nodded slowly, understandingly, and murmured, "Then make yours." It was the simplest and most powerful advice I had ever been given. The next morning, I called my attorney again. This time, I dictated the exact terms. Vanessa was to be removed from everything. Joint accounts, life insurance, the deed to the house. Connor would get no inheritance, no company shares, not even my watch collection that he had once begged me to save for him. My mother, my father, my cousins, anyone who got on that plane or stayed silent was excluded. Instead, I named Irene the sole beneficiary. Every property, every investment, every share accumulated over 30 years. She protested at first, said it was not right, that she was just a housekeeper, but she was not. Not to me. She was the only one who had chosen me when there was nothing to gain. The attorney paused before finalizing the documents. "Are you sure this is what you want? These are major changes, Brandon." I looked him in the eye and said, "As major as walking away from someone on their deathbed." That silenced him. He signed what he had to sign, stamped what he had to stamp, and within a few hours, my life was legally restructured. Not out of spite, but out of truth. It felt clean, like wiping a table after a long, messy meal. No crumbs, no pretending. That night, I wrote a letter, not to one person, but to all of them. To those who abandoned me. It began. I poured every drop of my disappointment into those pages. I reminded them that love is not proven in perfect moments, but in painful ones, that family is not built with blood, nor with parties, but with whoever shows up when no one else does. I explained how I had watched them from my hospital bed, smiling for the cameras while I begged a nurse for water. How they laughed while I was barely conscious with a machine breathing for me. I ended the letter with a single sentence. You are no longer part of my life or my legacy. Then I signed it, sealed it, and left it on the kitchen island for when they returned. My final act of closure. They came back tanned, with souvenirs and a trail of perfectly curated Instagram photos like breadcrumbs leading to a lie. The house was silent when they walked in. No welcome, no music, no smell of dinner in the air. Vanessa was the first to walk through the door, dragging her designer suitcase with a confident smile, still wearing her massive sunglasses, as if stepping off a yacht instead of entering the home of the man she had left behind. Connor followed right behind, laughing at something on his phone. Probably a comment under one of their stylish couple photos. My mother came in last, holding a bag from the Athens airport and asking aloud if anyone had watered her plants while she was gone. None of them noticed the envelope on the kitchen island. They were too busy living in the echo of their own illusion, believing that life would just continue, that I would be there waiting like a faithful dog, grateful for the crumbs of attention, too broken to be angry. It was Irene who had left the letter there as I had asked. The white envelope stood out against the dark granite of the kitchen island. My name elegantly written in blue ink, for those who abandoned me. At first, no one touched it. It sat there like a silent accusation, radiating something cold and undeniable. Finally, Vanessa picked it up, turning it over as if she feared it might bite her. I imagined her expression as she read the first line. Probably amusement at first, then confusion, followed by the slow horror that arrives when the ground starts to shift beneath your feet and you realize you no longer have any power. She said nothing at first. She simply set the letter back down, her fingers trembling slightly. That is when I knew it had hit exactly as it was supposed to. No dramatic screaming or sobbing, just silence. And that silence was far more deafening. They tried to call me almost immediately. First Vanessa, then Connor, then my mother, one after the other. My phone did not ring once. Everything went to Derek, my assistant, whom I had explicitly instructed to screen everything. Mr. Brandon is unavailable, he answered each time in a serene and measured voice. He is asked to have no contact with any family members at this time. When they pushed, he repeated the line. When they tried to manipulate him with guilt, he stood firm. He has made his decisions clear. It did not take long before the text messages started. Entire pages. Vanessa started with fake concern. Are you okay? This is not like you. Then came the accusations. You are being dramatic. Then the desperation. We need to talk, please. Connor was more direct. What is this? You are cutting me off like this after all I did for you. That part made me laugh. He had never done anything for me. Only taken and taken. I replied to none. Silence was my response. I watched from afar as they unraveled. I imagined them pacing in the living room, rereading the letter, wondering how serious I was, wondering if they could turn the situation around. But it was all already done. The will had been changed, the accounts separated, the power of attorney notarized, and all relevant documents legally bulletproofed. Irene, fully informed and protected. They could touch absolutely nothing anymore, and that realization hit them harder than any words I could have said. They were not crying for me. They were crying for the lost access to my money, my generosity, the lifestyle I had funded for far too long. Then came the social media circus. Vanessa posted first a photo of us from 5 years ago, arm in arm at my company's Christmas gala. Me in a tuxedo, her in a red silk dress she had picked just to impress the directors' wives. The caption read, "Love, healing, and clarity." In less than an hour, the comments were full of sympathy. You are a strong woman. He will eventually realize what he lost. You deserve better. I did not flinch. Let them play act. Let them build a storyline out of their guilt and present themselves as victims. I would no longer play any part in their act. Connor posted a cryptic story, a black background with the words, "Some people forgot who was there for them." My mother wrote a long paragraph on Facebook about how family is complicated and one must hold space for forgiveness. That was her style. Vague emotional manipulation disguised as wisdom. She tagged me in the post. Derek removed the tag, and then we blocked both of them. I did not need to explain myself to a woman who once told me, "You are strong, you will be fine," before getting on a plane to Greece while I was hospitalized, a woman who had sent me one single dry message, "Keep us updated," and never asked again. She had not earned my forgiveness, or even my time. Irene, on the other hand, stood firm the whole time. She handled a few journalists who approached the house, snooping around, cameras in hand, waiting for a statement. She never gave them anything. "He is resting. That is all you need to know." That was her line over and over. And when one particularly persistent reporter tried to bribe her with a gift card and a promise of anonymity, she looked him in the eye and said, "You are lucky I am not calling the police." That is when I understood that I had not left her everything just because she was kind. I had done it because she was capable, because she had character, and because, unlike everyone else, she had never needed anything from me to be loyal. I spent the rest of the week walking the grounds of the villa, letting the late summer air fill my lungs. I felt stronger every day, not just physically, but emotionally and spiritually. I had lost a lot: trust, time, illusions, but what I gained was worth far more. Clarity. I did not need to shout to be heard. I did not need to defend myself to people who had already made up their minds. The only thing I had to do was live fully without them. Everything came to a head 2 weeks later. I should have expected it. Honestly, when people like Vanessa and Connor lose control, they do not just disappear. They burn bright and messy, setting fire to everything in hopes of standing among the smoke and calling themselves survivors. That time was now. It was not grief or confusion or even an attempt at redemption. It was a complete nervous breakdown from people who had built their identities around my patience and were now collapsing in its absence. It all started at my company's quarterly gala, an event I was still invited to out of respect, even though I did not plan to attend. My name was still on the foundation's posters, my face still on the website. I had told the board I would be stepping back temporarily, but somehow word leaked that I might make a discreet appearance, and that was enough. Vanessa showed up in a tight black dress, the kind she used to wear to our anniversary dinners before she forgot we had anniversaries. Her makeup was dramatic, almost theatrical. She walked in looking like a widow in an advertising photo shoot. Connor followed close behind, wearing one of my old suits. That part hurt more than expected. I had given it to him years ago, tailored to his size for his graduation dinner. Seeing him wear it now, strutting as if he had earned a right to my legacy, made something cold shift inside me. I did not speak. I did not even make eye contact. I stood on the balcony with Derek, watching it all unfold from above. "They do not know you are here," Derek murmured. "Do you want to leave?" I shook my head. "I want them to see that I am not backing down." The confrontation did not take long. Vanessa crossed the room with the grace of a woman used to being the center of attention, smiling just enough to keep up appearances. But when she reached the bottom of the stairs and saw me, her face shattered. The smile vanished. Her voice echoed high and sharp. "Brandon," and the room fell silent. Not in a dramatic movie way, but as a collective hush. I did not move, I did not answer. I just took a sip of my drink and waited. She climbed the stairs, dragging Connor with her. And when they reached my level, her voice became something designed to sound hurt. "Are you really going to ignore me here in front of everyone?" I looked her straight in the eye and replied, "You ignored me while I was almost dying. Seems fair to me." That was the moment the mask shattered into 1,000 pieces. Her eyes narrowed, her jaw clenched, and all that fake humility she had cultivated for the cameras vanished. "You are mentally ill," she spat. "Everyone sees it. Everything you are doing, rewriting your will, isolating yourself, playing the martyr, it is madness." I let her finish. I wanted her to dig her own grave with every word. Connor stepped in then, as if the suit gave him permission to speak. "You are acting like a victim, Brandon. We were all there for you. You are just too selfish to see it." That part genuinely made me laugh out loud. "You were there when the doctors could not stabilize my vitals?" I asked. "You were there when I needed someone to hold my hand at 3 in the morning, Or were you zip-lining over the canyon with my wife? A few guests gasped. Someone even dropped a glass, and at that moment, I knew I had reclaimed every ounce of power they had drained from me. Vanessa looked ready to slap me, but instead, she turned to the crowd. "He has lost his mind," she said. "He is unstable. This is elder abuse." It would have been comical if it were not so desperate. I was 52 years old. I was not elderly, and I was still lucid enough to see through every game she was trying to play. I turned to Derek. "Make sure security knows they are no longer welcome at any company events." He nodded. As simple as that. The door they had walked through all this time, the social capital, my name, my influence, was slammed shut abruptly, publicly, and irrevocably. The fallout was immediate. Within an hour, clips of the confrontation began appearing online. Someone had recorded everything. Of course, it hit Reddit, then TikTok, and then various gossip blogs. Headlines ranged from "shocking confrontation," "wife and brother at gala," to "Horizon Foundation scandal," the real story behind the inheritance feud. I did not care about the noise. Let them talk. Let them speculate. The truth had already been lived, documented, signed, and sealed. But what mattered was how the public reacted. People started seeing through Vanessa's fake tears. They remembered the photos in Greece, dug up old tweets. One particularly viral post juxtaposed a video of her meltdown at the gala with a picture of her and Connor clinking wine glasses in Santorini. "Caption this yourself." The caption read, "Vanessa's sympathy tour was over. Brands she collaborated with quietly dropped her from campaigns. Connor's small fitness business received an avalanche of bad reviews until it was destroyed. Even my mother's social circle began to shrink. Ladies who used to praise her Sunday barbecues now whispered about the family disgrace behind her back. I did not orchestrate any of this. I did not need to. The truth had its own gravity. All I did was let it exist without interfering. The rest happened because people can sense authenticity, and they can smell desperation even faster. Irene called me again a few nights after the gala. "They came back to the house again," she said in a tired but firm voice. "This time with someone they called a mediator. I told them they could speak to my lawyer, just like you said." I thanked her. She paused, then added, "I hope you do not regret giving me everything." That stopped me, not because I regretted it, but because I knew what it cost her to ask. "Irene," I said, "you were the only one who stayed. You were there when no one else was. You earned it. Not because you asked for it, but precisely because you never did." She did not answer right away, but I heard a soft sigh of relief, as if she had kept that question stuck in her chest for weeks. She had finally let it out. I thought the aftermath would bring me some twisted satisfaction, but no. It brought me calm. Not peace, not yet, but something quieter than anger, something cleaner. I spent my mornings walking along the coast near the villa, watching the waves kiss the shore, feeling the sun warm my back. I started reading again. I started writing in a journal again. I learned to cook a few simple dishes. I even started painting, though I never showed my artwork to anyone. It was not a distraction, it was rediscovery. Who was I without them, without their demands, without their needs, without their noise? The answer surprised me. I was better. There was no single moment that brought peace. It arrived little by little, like light filtering through thick curtains gradually, until the room went from darkness to something livable. There were days when I still woke up expecting to be angry. I would open my eyes ready for resentment, for that familiar pressure in my chest. But slowly, I realized that weight had lifted. Not completely, not forever, but enough to breathe, enough not to carry them with me everywhere. That was healing for me. Not forgiveness, not reconciliation, but liberation, the quiet knowledge that I no longer owed anyone an explanation for my survival. Still, there were attempts. You cannot cut people out of your life and your legacy and expect them to disappear without a fight. There was a handwritten letter from my mother this time, as if ink could accomplish what her words never could. She wrote about her childhood, about sacrifice, about how families go through phases of silence. She did not apologize once. The closest thing to an apology was, "I know I could have been more present." That was not an apology. It was a weather report, distant, impersonal, as if she were describing a missed appointment and not a son she had abandoned in a hospital bed. I folded the letter carefully and put it in a drawer I did not plan to reopen. I did not burn it. I was not angry. I simply did not need it anymore. Connor did not write. He sent a video message. Of course, sitting shirtless on a beach somewhere, sunglasses on, casual tone. Yo man, he said as if we were back in high school. Look, everything went crazy, but we are family. You and me, bro. You know I never wanted to hurt you. He paused, scratched his head, and added, maybe we both made mistakes. That is where I hit delete. There was no both of us. There was him, there was me, and there was a woman I thought I would grow old with, who saw my near death as an opportunity to go on vacation. Neither sand nor soft lighting would rewrite that history. Vanessa's last attempt was a care package. One of those curated boxes with herbal teas, scented candles, and a note saying, personal care is very important. Wishing you light and healing. No signature, no explanation, an empty gesture she would probably use as a tax deduction. I did not even open the candle. I left the box in the hallway outside the villa and told the staff to give it away. I did not need her pity. Did not need her guilt. I wanted her gone, and finally, she was. Irene visited me on Sundays. She always brought something warm, soup, fresh bread, banana muffins, and she brought time. She never stayed too long, never asked for anything. She just sat with me on the patio, drank tea, and let the silence stretch comfortably between us. Sometimes we talked about books or memories of home, or even dreams she had when she was young but never pursued. She told me she wanted to open a small shelter for elderly women, a safe, clean place full of flowers. Maybe someday, she said almost shyly. I looked at her then, truly looked at her, and said, let us make it happen. She blinked, confused. You would fund it? I smiled. I will fund it with you. For a second, she said nothing. Then she nodded slowly, not grateful, not surprised, just resolute, as if she had been waiting for the opportunity to build something real. We started laying the groundwork the following week. Lawyers, deeds, nonprofit registration. For the first time in years, I felt energized by a project. Not because it brought me recognition or money, but because it felt right. It felt like a legacy worth leaving, one rooted in service, in care, in silent acts of loyalty. Irene called it the Second Bloom Project. I like that. There was poetry in it. Not all stories bloom the first time. Some need loss, some need winter, some need a clearing before the seed can even take root. I did not tell anyone in the family. They had already lost access to that part of me. There was nothing left to explain. The will was airtight. The lawyers were on standby, and if they ever tried to contest it, as I expected from Vanessa, Irene would have the resources and support to protect it. She was no longer just my housekeeper. She was my partner, my confidant, my proof that loyalty still existed outside of blood, that love, real love, was proven in moments, not in declarations. The townhouse remained in Irene's name. She did not want to live in the master bedroom. It is yours, she said. But I told her the truth. Now it is just a room. Make it yours. She hesitated but finally agreed. It was important to me, not the room, but the gesture. I wanted her to stop thinking like a guest. She had earned her place in that house, in my life, in history. I had spent too much time letting others write for me. Never again. My health improved slowly but steadily. The doctor said I was lucky, that with good care and rest, I would fully recover my strength. I did not feel lucky. I felt determined, as if my body had been waiting for my heart to catch up, and now they were healing together. I walked more. I read more difficult books. I laughed again. Sometimes it was not a big laugh, but it was real, and that was worth more. Sometimes I thought about writing one last letter, something that would sum it all up. Not for them, but for me, a record of what it feels like to be left behind, to be stripped of every illusion and yet find something worth keeping. But I did not. I did not need the words. I was already living the answer. Comment. I've been thinking a lot about what this story really means to me. Sometimes, the hardest thing we can do is protect our own self-respect when others take it for granted. Setting clear boundaries isn't selfish. It's necessary for true peace. I love how one person's quiet kindness can remind us what true loyalty feels like. Healing doesn't always look loud or dramatic. It often comes in small, steady moments. Taking responsibility for our own happiness changes everything. Choosing calm over chaos is one of the most powerful decisions we can make. I hope you take a moment today to think about the relationships in your life, and choose to be that steady presence for someone else whenever you can. If you like the stories, don't forget to leave a comment and support the channel by subscribing. See you in the upcoming stories.